Located in eastern Riverside County, south of Interstate 10, in a detached section of Blythe, California, lies Ironwood State Prison, or ISP. Ironwood State Prison would first open its doors in 1994 and is home to over 3,100 minimum, medium, and maximum custody inmates. On June 22, 2024, at around 7:01 p.m., 3 incarcerated individuals, Jonathan Orduno, Juan Madrigal, and Samuel Ricardez, would allegedly attack another incarcerated person, Luis Padilla. Staff would immediately respond, sounding the alarm, and although the 3 assailants would flee the area, they were quickly located and detained without incident. However, 37 minutes later at 7:38 p.m., Luis Padilla would be pronounced deceased.
Drugs, guns, and nearly a dozen members of a notorious Oceanside gang were taken off the streets this week in what police are calling Operation 1620. 10 News reporter Allison Ash with the frightening details of how 3 children got caught up in it.
Oceanside police say their 4-month investigation centered around this park. It's called Balderrama Park. And among the 11 people arrested, 3 mothers who brought their children along to do drug deals. These are the faces of the 11 men and women arrested in Operation 1620. Among them, people with street names like Villain, Prime Time, Woody, and D-Boy. The key target in Operation 1620, George Orozco, who goes by the names Stretch and Armstrong. Orozco lived in this house, number 1620.
We knew that he was distributing to many other people. We knew that he was getting his product from some other folks that are up on the chart. And it was going throughout Oceanside, Escondido, Vista, and the Pauline Indian Reservation.
Early Wednesday morning, 120 officers fanned out across those areas, hauling in documented members and associates of the Pozzoli gang. They also seized more than a pound of methamphetamine, $8,000 in drug money, and this frightening cache of weapons, including a .50 caliber handgun. The guns belonged to this man, Wayne Swanson, who managed to escape to Canada. Police say their base of operations was San Diego Street near this park where children play. Sadly, tonight, 3 children are in protective custody, their parents in jail.
We heard that there were children involved. We needed to take immediate steps to go ahead and intervene with that.
Police say they believe Operation 1620 made a major dent in the drug trade in this area. They say the Pozzoli gang here is now basically dysfunctional. In Oceanside.
A big announcement from local law enforcement officials and San Diego police, the district attorney's office, all coming together, saying that they have now taken down a crime ring, all connected to the Mexican mafia.
The announcement was made here just a short time ago, and police in the DA's office say they've arrested and charged 7 people they say were running a crime den in the Encanto community. CBS 8's Kelly Hussedall joining us live from the neighborhood with everything we've learned here. Something like you'd see out of a movie here, Kelly.
I know, absolutely. That's right. The house that was at the center of this investigation, located here on Wonderland Avenue behind me, there's actually a separate unit beneath the home, and that's what neighbors say, or that's where neighbors say a lot of this activity was going on. Police say the house was being used as a crime den and that some of these defendants actually kidnapped a man and held him for ransom. Here's some of what else law enforcement said earlier today.
This case should serve as a warning to anyone who claims a neighborhood as theirs to terrorize. Stop. Do something to help your community, not harm it.
This is the FBI. We have a search warrant for the resident. Come up now with your hands up and nothing in your hand.
And the video that you're looking at right now is one of the FBI raids that was connected to this investigation. It happened close to the border. Search warrants were executed. A couple people were taken into custody.
Breaking news tonight out of Oceanside, where police are investigating a deadly shooting.
And Fox 5's Liberty Zabala is live at the scene with the latest on what she's learning. Liberty.
Good evening, Maria and Phil. Well, we are here at San Diego and Bush Streets, and this is where police are investigating that shooting. And I want to show you the scene behind me. They have this area blocked off with yellow caution tape, and there's a mom and pop shop right down the street right there with graffiti on the wall. That is where police say that they found one man dead. Now, here's what we know so far. Officers responded to Mission Avenue and San Diego Street just after 4 this afternoon for someone tagging graffiti near the Balderrama Recreation Center. Shortly after, officers say they then received reports of shots fired. Now, police found a man dead at the scene with multiple gunshot wounds, and they described him as a man in his 30s. Now, officers say they believe this to be an isolated incident and that there is no active threat to public safety. But at this time, we do not have a suspect description or any description of any suspect vehicle from police just yet. Now, homicide investigators are asking people here to avoid this area. They do have multiple sections of this street blocked off once again, and we are working with police to try to get more information, and we will bring that to you as soon as we get it. For now, live here in Oceanside, Liberty Zabala, Fox 5 News.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel today. We are going to be sticking with the theme that we've done so far in 2025. We're going to be sticking within the CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We've been covering stories out of there. Well, we started by covering all the murders that took place in the beginning of 2025. Things were setting off left and right all over the state, variety of different prisons. It was absolutely nuts. The last couple videos we've done, we've gone back a couple years. This one took place about 9-10 months ago in June of 2024. And it is absolutely just as crazy. You guys seem to really like when I go deep on the background information on the individuals involved, not just giving you the basic outline of the main subject of the story, but really you want to give depth to these characters, and that's really what they become. When you make these videos and this kind of content, these are the main characters of the story, and you're able to really tell a much more thorough story when you have good background information. So, been putting in a lot of work for you guys. That being said, I know I've mentioned it the last few videos. If you like what you hear, like what you see, it really only takes a couple seconds, guys. Just please smash the like button, leave a comment, engage in some conversation. And again, I just had it the other day. I had a guy mention on one of my videos, hey man, you're confusing me. And it's like, I don't mind the constructive criticism. I know I can be better. I know sometimes I talk too fast. Sometimes I ramble. Sometimes I'm too detail-oriented where I do confuse you guys. And again, I apologize. I'm always trying to get better. But my point is, I appreciate that comment because he engaged. It all helps. And then lastly, if you do like, my content, my videos, hit the subscribe button. It means a lot. If you've been watching some of my videos, you know that 20,000 is the goal this year. We're almost to 16,000, so hopefully we can hit that. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it here. This is from an article from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation website in Blythe, California. Remember, we're in Southern California here in Riverside County. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officials are investigating the June 22nd, 2024 death of an incarcerated person at Ironwood State Prison, or ISP, as a homicide. 7:01 p.m., 3 incarcerated people, Jonathan Orduno, Juan Madrigal, and Samuel Ricardez, allegedly attacked another incarcerated person, Luis Padilla. Staff would immediately sound the alarm. And this is interesting. This is one thing I haven't read in one of these stories, is the 3 assailants or alleged assailants, they took off running. But obviously they're inside a prison, so they're quickly located and detained without incident. I'm assuming they ran to just try to separate themselves from the actual incident to make things harder on whoever's investigating it, not just sit there with the knives or whatever weapons they used in their hands. Padilla would sustain multiple stab wounds, and life-saving measures were performed. And institutional medical staff was called, as well as 911 services. He gets transported to the institution's triage and treatment area, where unfortunately he was pronounced deceased 37 minutes after the attack at 7:38 p.m. Now, again, like in all these other cases, all these other stories, the suspects immediately get moved to restrictive housing pending the investigation. Inspector General, the county coroner, will have to determine the cause of death, even though we already know what it is. It's stab wounds. The Riverside County District Attorney's Office, they're all going to work together on this. So, really quick, Luis Padilla, 42 years old, was received from Los Angeles County on December 11th, 2001. No, that is not a typo. 2001. He'd been down a very, very long time. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, preventing dissuading a victim or witness under specified circumstances. He was also sentenced to 2 years for criminal threat to cause great bodily injury with enhancements of a street gang act and commission of a serious felony. He was also sentenced for stalking with enhancements of a street gang act. Now, he had ties to the EMF, the El Monte Flores gang, all right? The gang has an estimated unknown amount of members, but has tens of thousands of active members since it was formed in the 1940s. Goes way back. The gang claims South El Monte, North El Monte, and Mayflower Village as its turf. The gang's name comes from the Barrio Los Flores name for the flower field and nurseries in the El Monte area. El Monte Flores is now part of a larger organization, you can already guess where this is going, and pays taxes to Lame, or the Mexican Mafia. Now, EMF, or El Monte Flores, is known to beef with other Sureno gangs on the street. But once you are behind prison walls, you're all linked up as one. You're a Sureno gang member. You're going to run, operate, working for the Mexican Mafia. It's just how it is. Okay, and that's Luis Padilla. He's the victim in this. Samuel Ricardez, also known as Cartoon. He was also a Sureno gang member. He was a member of the Vario Pozole Locos gang. He was 28 years old. He was received from San Diego County on March 4th, 2014. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for intentional discharge of a firearm causing great bodily injury. He was only a minor when this happened. It was from a 2012 fatal shooting of a 17-year-old Oceanside boy. And again, we're going to get into the details of these guys and some of their cases. I will say this, Samuel Ricardez is a tough read, how his victim was killed and just the details of that case. Luis Padilla is really interesting, because you expect to see like first-degree murder, and all it is criminal threat to cause great bodily injury with enhancements of a street gang act and preventing, dissuading a victim or witness under specified circumstances. So I was really able to dig on his. I found his really good story through one of his appeals, and it breaks down his case as well. But back to Ricardez. So he's a Vario Pozole Locos gang member, another Sureno gang. They've been around a very, very long time, have a very rich history in that Oceanside, San Diego area. So he's convicted of a 2012 shooting of this 17-year-old boy. In addition to the murder conviction, he was also sentenced to 5 years for second-degree robbery with enhancements of using a firearm and being in a street gang during the commission of a violent felony. So it's like we always talk about in all these other previous videos I've done. Guys, gang enhancements, weapon enhancements, first striker, or second striker, third striker, it all just adds up, and that is how they just keep you in the system. Jonathan Orduno, 23. He's received also from San Diego County on August 31st, 2022. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for using a firearm. And finally, Juan Madrigal, 26, was received from San Diego County on March 15th, 2023. He was sentenced to life as well with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for intentional discharge of a firearm causing great bodily injury. And he was also sentenced to 7 years for second-degree murder and 5 years for discharge of a firearm at an inhabited dwelling or vehicle aircraft. Like we mentioned in the intro, Ironwood State Prison, located in Riverside County, opened in 1994, houses over 3,100 minimum, medium, and maximum custody inmates, provide academic classes, vocational instruction, work assignments, and rehabilitation programs, and employs more than 1,200 people. Okay, now, let's jump into these guys' past. We're going to start with Jonathan Orduno. This is on an article from March 27th, 2020. This is really, really interesting. San Diego, California, a 19-year-old man was behind bars Friday on suspicion of fatally shooting an acquaintance at a San Isidro motel. Customs officers, I heard that right, Customs, who recognized Jonathan Orduno of Chula Vista from a Be on the Lookout bulletin, took him into custody at the San Isidro point of entry on Thursday night in connection with the death last week of 22-year-old Adrian Torres Garcia, according to San Diego police. A housekeeper would find Torres Garcia dead in a rented room at a motel in the 100 block of Cali Primera shortly before noon on March 18th. Again, this is 2020. Homicide Lieutenant Matt Dobbs said the victim, a South Bay native with no known permanent address, died of at least one gunshot to his upper body. So sadly, when you read stuff like that, no known address, 19-year-old renting a room, kind of a seedy motel. Unfortunately, he's probably on the streets. He's probably a gang member. Maybe has drug issues. He's young. He's a kid. And it's sad when you read stories like this. And there's just little keywords you can tell on someone that's going to be homeless or doesn't have a place to go. And that's one of them when you see no permanent address. Officer Dobbs would decline to to disclose a suspected motive of the shooting or release details on what led investigators to identify Orduno as the alleged killer. The lieutenant also would not say that the suspect was trying to leave the country or was re-entering the United States at the time of his arrest. Orduno was booked into the San Diego Central Jail on suspicion of first-degree murder. He was being held without bail pending arraignment. Yeah, just crazy. These guys are young when they're committing these crimes. These guys are very, very young. Orduno was 19 at the time of his. Now, this is Samuel Cartoon Ricardez. He was 17 when this crime occurred. Or 16, actually. He was 16 when this crime occurred. And remember, he's the Barrio Pozole Locos gang member. His story is very, very interesting. So, again, let's just jump right into it here. It was an emotional afternoon in the courthouse yesterday, when family of the boy who was shot to death and family of the boy who was found guilty of the killing took turns speaking to a judge before sentencing. Samuel Ortega Ricardez was 16 years old when he reportedly killed another teenager with a single shotgun blast in March of 2012. Ricardez was tried as an adult, and a jury declared him guilty of murder and robbery and found true the gang allegations. And this was found out on May 2nd, 2013. According to the prosecutor, Ricardez was with the Barrio Pozole Locos gang when they invaded rival gang territory of Center Street Locos, located just on the other side of the freeway. Both gangs claimed different streets in Oceanside. And however, according to the prosecution and the evidence presented during the trial, Jeff Allard, the prosecutor, suggested that gangsters in the neighborhood became aware of the invading group and shot at them. So, basically what the prosecution is saying is Ricardez, his gang, they say, okay, the Central Street Locos are invading our area. Let's go get them. We're going to kind of bring the fight to them. Ricardez, according to the prosecution, lets off some shots, does whatever. He turns and he starts running away from the scene when he comes face to face with a local teenager who recognized him. Ricardez, without hesitation, raises up the loaded, and they call it a long gun, he was carrying and shot the other teen in the belly. That teen's name was Antonio Carachurti Perez, who was 17 years old. He died of a single shotgun blast to his abdomen, according to the San Diego County Medical Examiner. Now, here's where it gets really sad and really crazy, and this is where you hear about these court cases and how it just rips families apart. The mother of the boy who was killed wept before the judge, saying, quote, "I am ready for justice for my son." The mother of the boy to be sentenced stated, while also crying, "I am 100% certain he is not guilty." And I want you to picture that in the courtroom going on. Two mothers, each who equally love their sons, and just the impact that has. And we talk about this with gangs and drugs and everything. And again, I don't want to get too off track, but this is why I say get the help, reach out. There are outlets, there are things you can do. If you're struggling with being in a gang, if you're struggling with drugs or alcohol, reach out and get the help. I just had 5 years sober on March 10th of this year. I was never in a gang, wasn't affiliated, but I ran with individuals who were in gangs. I've been in jail, I've been in detox, I've been in treatment centers. I've been around African Americans, Hispanic guys that were in gangs who I'm also in treatment with or jail with. And I'm telling you guys, it's just absolutely not the life. Just absolutely crazy. So his mom, Ricardez's mom, says, "I'm 100% certain he is not guilty." Both women and other family members who spoke in San Diego's North County Superior Courthouse yesterday had the benefit of a court-provided Spanish-speaking interpreter for the occasion. The same judge who heard the trial, Honorable Kimberly Logada, because remember, this is the penalty phase or the sentencing phase, would go on to sentence Ricardez to 75 years to life in prison on August 12th, 2013. And just like that, man, your life's over. One person's dead. One person's basically never going to get out until he's an old man. Juan Madrigal passed. A man who fatally shot another man on Easter Sunday, 2020, near the Rolando neighborhood, was sentenced Monday to 50 years to life in state prison. Juan Carlos Madrigal, 24 at the time of his conviction, was convicted by a San Diego jury of first-degree murder for the April 12th, 2020 shooting death of a 24-year-old Debron Blaney Moore. The same jury, now this story is really interesting, the same jury convicted Madrigal of an attempted murder count for shooting at a woman during the same shooting that killed Moore. Prosecutors would allege the shooting stemmed from an argument that began when Madrigal, his brother, and his cousin were in a vehicle that struck Debron Blaney Moore. An argument ensued and Moore left the scene. Madrigal, his brother, and his cousin get pissed and they basically start pursuing Debron Blaney Moore. That's when Moore supposedly was shot at around 10 p.m. near the intersection of University and College Avenues, according to the San Diego Police Department. The victim would later die in a nearby hospital. At Madrigal's sentencing hearing, defense attorney Amy Hoffman sought a new trial based on what she said was new evidence indicating the woman Moore was with had a gun. And that's, remember, so Madrigal gets the murder charge for Deborah and Blaney Moore, but he also gets the attempted murder count for what prosecutors were saying he shot at the woman who was in the car with Deborah and Blaney Moore. But his defense attorney is saying, well, no, the woman that Deborah and Blaney Moore was with had a gun. All right? And so at Madrigal's sentencing hearing, defense attorney Amy Hoffman sought a new trial based on what she said was new evidence indicating the woman Moore was with had a gun, supporting the theory that Madrigal fired in self-defense. So that was his entire case. Juan Madrigal's entire case was, this is self-defense. Though 4 bullet casings were found at the shooting scene, all coming from Juan Madrigal's gun, a recording from the surrounding area captured 6 sounds that were similar to gunshots. Hoffman said analysis conducted by an audio analysis concluded 2 of these noises were also gunshots, and the attorney argued they likely came from a gun wielded by the woman who was with Moore. San Diego County Superior Court Judge Melinda Lasater said the evidence indicated Madrigal fired first, even if the woman also fired, though Hoffman said the mere presence of another gun supported the self-defense claim. Lasater denied the new trial motion, saying the jury had heard the recording of the alleged gunshots and heard statements from the woman indicating, and this is really weird, the woman indicated, no, I didn't have a gun, but she yelled or acted like she made gunshot sounds with like her mouth or her voice or whatever to try to scare Madrigal and his brother and his cousin off. But absolutely crazy. Now, we get to Luis Padilla, our victim in this case. Now, remember, like I said, he's been locked up since 2001, for stalking, for basically trying to dissuade, prevent somebody. Basically what he's trying to do is for the benefit of his gang and his homies, he's trying to get these crimes we're about to talk about, people not to testify. He's trying to threaten people, extort people into saying, hey, you better not testify, you better not cooperate, or else. So these are the facts presented by the prosecution, and he got a lot of time for this stuff. On January 15th, 2001, Elizabeth R. was living at a motel in El Monte. She lived with her husband, Cesar V., her 2 children, her brothers Raymond and William, and her sisters, April and Veronica. At approximately 7 p.m., Raymond would run into Elizabeth's room, grab a stick, and he would run out. Elizabeth and Cesar followed Raymond out of the front of the motel. There was a blue van outside with 5 or 6 male occupants whom Elizabeth knew to be NSM gang members or Northside Monte gang members. A man named Casper, who was actually our victim, Luis Padilla, later identified as Appellant Padilla, would get out of the van and ask Elizabeth's brother Raymond, quote, where are you from? Raymond's friend would answer for them saying, quote, Monte Flores, because he was from the El Monte Flores gang. As the other men got out of the van, Casper, quote, said F Monte Flores, and he pulled a knife from his pocket. Elizabeth said she was going to call the police, and she and her family members ran away. Elizabeth saw that some of the men jumped back into the van to leave, and some started walking away. Elizabeth was at first, quote, pretty sure Padilla got back in the van, but then she said she was actually positive he got back in the van. Elizabeth returned to the front of the motel to look for Raymond, that's her brother, and saw the van stop on Shirley Avenue, which was across from the motel that they were staying at. It's across from the motel driveway. One of the men from the van went into a house. Shortly thereafter, he came out of the house, basically went in to get a gun, and fired 2 or 3 shots in their direction. Elizabeth, who was scared and on her toes and everything, she would immediately report the shooting to the police and received a subpoena, this is where things get hairy, to testify on March 22nd, 2001. She would show up to court, she would do her part, but the case never went to trial due to plea bargains. All right, so the initial incident where she meets Luis and all their run-ins, January 15th, 2001. She reports it, gets a subpoena, which it's like, God, if you're her, it's probably frustrating because you show up on March, a couple months later, March 22nd. She goes to court, never goes to trial because of plea bargains. Detective Charles Carlson investigated the January 15, 2001 shooting. He searched a house located on the 4028 Shirley Avenue where Juan Aguilar lived. He searched 4026 Shirley Avenue where Padilla and his family lived. Both houses are on the same lot. Carlson found a blue van on the property belonging to a Manuel Castañon. A piece of paper with Padilla's name and telephone number were found in the van. Castañon and Aguilar were charged with committing the January 15th shooting, for which Elizabeth R., her brother Raymond, and her sister April were initially subpoenaed to show up on that March 22nd hearing. Castellon and Aguilar would plead guilty, but the investigation continued because there were 4 to 5 other suspects. Remember, there was a whole van full of these guys. Carlson had possibly identified one of 2 additional suspects and would file charges if able to obtain additional information. If he filed charges, Elizabeth, her family members, they're all going to have to be witnesses. They're all going to have to see this thing through. So this is where, with Luis Padilla, the stalking, basically, to break it down, it's just witness intimidation. And he's going to do whatever he has to do. And we're going to keep reading. We're not going to read the entire thing, but I'm going to give you guys a good idea what he did in order to try to prevent these guys from testifying. So, a few days after the shooting, Elizabeth and Caesar saw Padilla at a taco stand. Padilla was giving Elizabeth dirty looks. As she left, he called her, quote, an effing B-word and a rat. Caesar and Elizabeth had words with Padilla. They saw that Padilla had a knife attached to his belt. Elizabeth, Caesar, and their family members, being so kind of shook and in fear and realizing they're in deep with this gang, they relocate. They go to a new place called the Grand Home Inn, which is, it's kind of sad. It's just right next door to their former motel. So it's like they're not really moving too many places. The taco stand incident and 2 other incidents involving Caesar made Elizabeth scared and worried about testifying in the current case. So after this shooting, Luis Padilla, he's a gang member. He's not dumb. He realizes they're going to be witnesses. He realizes that this family, kind of led by Elizabeth, the sister, the wife, and her testimony is going to be what could get him and his homies locked up. The taco stand incident and 2 other incidents involving Caesar made Elizabeth scared and worried about testifying in the current case. On approximately March 27th, 2001, this is 5 days after Elizabeth showed up to testify about the case that ended up just getting plea bargained out, Caesar and 2 friends were standing at the pay telephones in front of the Grand Home Inn, which is where Elizabeth, Caesar, Raymond, William, the sisters, Veronica, and them, they all moved. But it's right next door to the last place they were at. Caesar noticed a gray Honda Civic pass by a few times. The car then drove towards the inn. Caesar saw 5 or 6 men throwing gang signs inside the car. Padilla was driving, and a man Caesar knew was, quote, Johnny Boy, later identified as Lorea, was in the back. The car stopped across the street, and Lorea got out of the car and walked towards Caesar while the car drove slowly alongside Lorea. Lorea pulled a gun from his back pocket and pointed it at Caesar, asking if he was, quote, from Flores. Caesar said he was not, and Lorea put the gun back. The Honda stopped in the driveway, and Luis Padilla, known as Casper's, and others got out. Padilla stepped up to Caesar, told him, quote, that his sister was an effing rata, meaning, quote, a snitch, and would hit him on the chin. Padilla apparently believed Caesar was Elizabeth's brother. Because if you guys remember, Caesar is not her brother. Raymond and William are. Caesar is Elizabeth's husband. Caesar resembled Raymond. Caesar ran inside the motel and hid. He was too afraid to file a police report. I didn't laugh when I read that, but I just kind of go, man, running inside and hiding is not the answer in that case. You need to either fight back or get well out of the area. But running inside and shutting the hotel room door is not going to get these guys off your case. But this just gives a really good idea and description of what gangs and gang members and numbers can do. You can literally intimidate an entire community. These guys don't have a lot of money. They're living in hotels. Husband, wife, brothers, sisters, their kids. You know, they're going to the local taco stand. They're going to the local store. You're going to see the local gang members. You're going to see these people that you probably grew up with. You probably know their parents. So this goes on for a long time. And this is where Luis Padilla ends up catching all of his charges. He gets a very, very long sentence for stalking and all of these other things. They get stacked on top of each other. And basically, this is what the jury would end up convicting Luis Alberto Padilla. They convict him of stalking Caesar V., in violation of Penal Code 646-9, dissuading a witness, Elizabeth R., by force or threat of violence, in violation of Section 136-1, and making criminal threats to Caesar V. and Elizabeth as well, in violation of Section 422. So, yeah, they just tried to intimidate the hell out of this family to stop them from testifying about these attacks and these shootings. And again, it's like we talked about, Luis Padilla, because he's a gang member, and all this is in furtherance of a gang. That's how this stuff just gets stacked on top of each other, and he ends up going in prison in 2001 and never getting out until his murder in June of last year. But anyway, there you guys have it. Much love, much appreciation. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.